I want to talk about grading, and because you're getting into the whole grading thing, I've obviously worked with a couple companies here at the shop. Now, let me just ask you a quick surface question. What do you think grading, what purpose do you think grading cards serve here in 2024? Is it more of a collecting to encapsulate and to protect, or is it just a means of potentially flipping? Like, what do you think it's more of these days?
Like for me personally or the hobby?
You personally first, and then the hobby.
Right now, I have an order in at PSA that's a bunch of, I'd say like a 20 card order. I'd say half of them are PC that I'd consider keeping, and the other half are cards that, I'm trying to grade to sell. But in general,
See, it's hard
I
to
feel
ask you
like,
because you're a collector and you do both. So
yeah,
it's not like you're one or the other. So but anyways, sorry, keep going.
wait, no, that's fine. But in general, I feel like definitely people grade to try to flip,
Say
and
that again.
that's why PSA gets the numbers they do.
It's crazy that you bring that up, the numbers that they do, because they do get tremendous numbers. And listen, great business. They've sucked a lot of people in, they brainwashed a lot of people, and people try to tell me here at the shop, like, oh, PSA has the most value. It's like, oh, well, does it really? So I go on eBay. We can sit here and argue best quarterbacks all day, but generally speaking, it's gonna be Patrick Mahomes. So I type in Patrick Mahomes, PSA 9, enter, and then I filter lowest to highest. And you want to know what the lowest sales are? I'll save you the trouble. It's $1.99 for inserts, numbered cards. It's quite tragic, to be honest. So I turned to them and I asked them, I'm like, well, does PSA really gain that much value? I mean, if you just submit anything you want, pay $20, $25, whatever the number is per card, and you just watch, you're losing money. So that's why, like, I just don't understand. Anything and everything should not be submitted. Certain cards should, and certain cards should go certain places. I think vintage is great for SGC is great for vintage. I think CGC is great for Pokemon. If you really think you have a perfect card, send it to Beckett, and PSA is just kind of all around, I guess. So I made a post about this, Ricky. You might have saw it. I forget if you did. It's January 2024 items graded from PSA, CGC, SGC, and Beckett. Now, I don't think I can pull it up on the screen here. Let's see if I can. Does this work? Oh, perfect.
There we
Can you
go.
see that?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So that means they can too. Okay, perfect. When you look at this, what's your first thought?
Beckett has fallen off the cliff.
That was exactly what I said. Again, the big two, I mean, we're going to call big three PSA, Beckett, SGC, fine. But typically, the two best has always been PSA and Beckett. Beckett, by and far, has fallen off a cliff. Now, again, this is just January, but I'm glad that there's the month over month and year over year data to show, because month over month from December 23 to January 24, it's only gone up 11% in terms of how many cards they have graded. Year over year from January 23, when the hobby was still kind of booming, but normalizing a little bit, kind of taking a turn, it's only been up 1% from January 23 to January 2024. That was the first thing that I noticed too. And then you look at a guy like PSA, or a grading company like PSA, down 1% month over month. But when you're dealing with a million cards, it doesn't matter. But the year over year is up 22%. Give me your reactions to this.
The fact that it is only at 58K and they're up from last year is crazy.
And they're up from last month too. I could only imagine what the December data looked like.
Wow, that's terrible. Great for CGC. Wow, jeez.
So there's like more numbers on the website. I think it's like gemrate.com or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually dives into, oh, this is baseball, this is football, this is Pokemon, this is other TCG. And it really breaks it down. And a lot of CGCs is TCG/Pokemon.
Okay.
But listen, I don't care what's what. So I'm just looking at numbers purely in a vacuum. And when I see CGC is reeling in 184,000, regardless what's being submitted, being second for the month of January, ahead of SGC, who's offering $9 sales, who's offering $14, specials, and ahead of Beckett, while being up plus 53% from December, while being up plus 40% from January 23. I think that is most impressive. And I'm not just saying that because I work with CGC. I'm really not. But I think that whole mantra of big three grading companies needs to be adjusted, personally.
So the thing is that CGC, like you said, does a lot of trading cards and Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And when people say the big three, I think they're more, at least from my perspective, I think they're more so talking about sports.
Okay.
And
That's
you
that's
don't
that's
you
a good way
don't
to look at it.
you don't really see well, you do see CGC sport cards, but not too many people submit their sports cards to CGC as opposed to PSA, SGC, and Beckett.
When
But
February's comes out, I want to try to get some screenshots of like the breakdown and such. And then, when that report comes out, it would be for episode 13. And was that 4 weeks from now? We can kind of dive deep into the numbers and compare and contrast and see what changed. I think that'd be a good segment to have here on the podcast, is kind of diving into, some details and numbers like this. What do you think of SGC here? Always been referred to as the third. And for the month of January, they are still the third. But that year over year plus 94%,
yeah,
that is impressive.
that's basically doubling there.
That's what I said. But like, is this because the $9 specials, the $14 specials, so people are just submitting their cards and getting them back in 10 days for super cheap money? Or are people actually submitting cards to SGC to serve maybe a bigger purpose? Like, again, resale value. They like the look of the slabs. Maybe they, want to collect the SGC slabs because they like the look of them. Or is this just because of the specials?
For now, I think it's just because of the specials and, some people like the classic look on the SGC slabs. I mean, small sample size. I ran a poll on my story asking, do you prefer a PSA 9 or an SGC 10? And people still said PSA 9,
which is crazy to me.
Which I found funny because if you ask people if they prefer PSA 9 or raw, they'll say raw.
I have a Machamp alt art from I think Astral Radiance, I believe that's from, and it's an SGC 10. And I've had a little trouble selling it because it's a Pokemon, it's SGC, and that doesn't really mix well. But again, I don't want to crack it because it's a 10. I don't want to potentially risk cracking it because it's a SGC 10. And again, what am I going to do with it? I could submit it somewhere else, sure, but it's already a 10 from a major grading company. So it's still $100-something card. So why would I bother with it? But it does bode the question is, where do people lie when it comes to, nines versus raws versus, 10s when it's not PSA that's the 10? Again, would people rather have a CGC 10 or a PSA 9 or a raw card? It's just so many people, I think, blindly fall in love with that mantra of PSA holds the most value. And you can clearly tell that people are submitting their cards, 1.2 million cards, almost a million more than CGC. But why? Again, why? It's just so bizarre. And I hope to see that these numbers kind of come closer together. I think it would be better off to talk about in terms of conversation and debating and such like that. People would rather have PSA 9 over SGC 10, CGC 10. And they oftentimes would rather have those cards raw than be like a CGC 9.5 or an SGC 9.5 because the potential is there for a PSA 10 if it's still raw. Meanwhile, it's already graded a 9.5 from this other company.
Yeah, so I'm kind of, shopping around my James Wood that I got graded.
I'm going to end the screen sharing.
This guy right
Crazy
here.
to me. Is that the 9.9? Okay, it is.
9.9 atomic out of 100 auto. So I've been getting messages and stuff saying that because it's a 9, it's less than a raw. So it's like, if I crack the case, it goes up in value.
That's what people are telling you.
It's like it makes sense to me at all. Obviously it's not going to be as much as a 10, obviously. But to say if I crack this slab right now, it goes up in value is kind of crazy.
I'm going to look on Card Ladder real quick. I don't know why. I just keep using Patrick Mahomes optic cards because they're just so easy. I'm going to look up to see what raw versus 9s are doing of Mahomes. So just on Card Ladder, the last sold price of a PSA 10 optic base was $1,077. Let's see. PSA 9 did $410. Oh, they don't have a raw on here. Damn it. Okay, well, I'll just go to eBay then. So $410.
For a
Now,
9.
again, I
Okay.
think this is totally like ludicrous, I think, because you would like to think that getting it graded a 9 is going to help its value. But more often than not, it really doesn't. Again, it just depends on what the card is. And I tell people this: if it's a short print, if it's a thick card, if it's a vintage card, different story. But if we're just going to compare and contrast the same card, depending on, whatever it is, let's see, we have 410, 420 best offer was accepted. I don't plan on going looking that up. 370, 300 best offer accepted, 300, 336, 390. So in this Mahomes situation, again, this is just a one-off, it's better to have it as a 9 than it is to have it raw. But people are going to tell you that because you have a prospect auto number to 100 that it's a 9, that it's better off raw. Again, this just doesn't make any sense to me. Again, there's no consistency. If it was consistent that, hey, 9s are always going to be worth more than raw, or raw is always going to be worth more than 9, makes all the sense in the world. But if we're going to have some inconsistent, we could do this with Josh Allen, Lamar, we could do this with everybody, and we could probably find half of the field that we look up be one way or the other, like 9s are worth more than raws, while raws are worth more than 9s. Again, there's no consistency in this hobby when it comes to grading. And that's why I think it's such a huge talking point. Because again, if there was consistency, okay, who cares? Ricky, crack it, resubmit it, or just sell it raw. But because it depends on who you ask, it's like, what do you do? What do you do with it?
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot of it is trying to devalue it from a person trying to sell you and then pumping it when you try to sell it. So I think that plays a part of it too. When some people are buying whatever, they're trying to make it, oh, it's only a 9, so blah, blah, blah. And then when they try to sell it, it's like, oh, it's a 9. I don't see anything wrong with it, blah, blah, blah. So it's like,
it's truly who you ask, which sucks. And that's why, like, I kind of circle back to my original proposed question is like, what's the purpose of grading cards? Is it for collection or is it to resell? And I guarantee you more than 50%. I don't want to guarantee like a high percentage because I don't really know, but I guarantee you at least 50%. I'd probably even say 60 to 70% is for reselling purposes. Because me personally, who's a collector in my heart, I don't care about the grade of my card. I got tons of cool cards right here. I don't need any of them graded. I got some cards above me. Some of them are graded because they already were. From a collector's standpoint, the number from somebody else to determine the condition of your card should not matter. But if you do go to resell a card, whether it's that card or a different card, the number on the grade does matter. Whether it's me, another collector, or John Doe or whoever, what's the point of grading your collection if it's your collection outside of encapsulating it for protection purposes? There is no reason to get it graded because again, I don't need this card. I'm just going to point to this card here, which I love because it's, beautiful card in my opinion, to have like an 8.5 on it because someone saw a print line or someone's having a bad day. Now that 8.5 is going to ruin the card for me in my collection because it's an 8.5. I don't want no 8.5 in my collection. Grading, I truly think in 2024 has really become a tool for flipping. And as you can see, people are using that tool for flipping with PSA, with the amount of cards submitted to PSA, because everyone knows PSA has the most resale value. But for collectors out there, they might lean towards CGC, SGC, Beckett for that matter. But again, how many people are in this hobby who are truly collectors compared to how many of them are into the game for business?